This is CBC Vancouver News.
The message to these big, faceless companies is, you will be held accountable in British Columbia for the harm that you cause to people.
BC considers a law to go after social media companies for alleged harm, especially against kids. Plus,
I've had patients where I've done an exam, found a lump, looking for a diagnostic mammogram, and having to phone or get my staff to phone 3 or 4 different locations.
patients and doctors in BC sound the alarm about growing wait times for specialized breast cancer tests. And
living together, you can share everything.
Moving back in. Amid high housing costs, many BC families are choosing to live with family. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The BC government says it is time for legislation to protect people from harmful products, especially social media. The Premier and Attorney General are pledging to take legal action against tech companies whose algorithms can pose health and safety risks, especially to kids. As John Hernandez tells us, BC is the latest to try to hold social media companies accountable for things like suicide and eating disorders.
The message to these big, faceless companies is, you will be held accountable in British Columbia for the harm that you cause to people.
A warning from BC's Premier to social media behemoths like Meta.
That British Columbia will pursue them for the costs of the harms that their products cause.
Legislation announced today is said to give the province the tools to fight back against companies, including big tech, whose products officials say are harming British Columbians, especially kids.
Some use particularly addictive algorithms to create a dependency on their apps and platforms that can lead to mental health problems, including experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Officials say the act would help them recover public costs from a slew of companies, from big tobacco to social media giants, whose products can ultimately lead to doctor's appointments, hospitalizations, even deaths.
They sell advertising, they enter into agreements with banks and receive payments and transfers to and from British Columbia and right across Canada. And yes, in short, we believe that there are mechanisms to hold them accountable here.
The basic effort with this is to kind of lift the game of social media, ensure that safety is at the forefront of their design. There's currently no laws that impose that.
In BC, there's been a growing number of suicides after youth were targeted by predators over social media. And experts warn the platform's designs and algorithms are also taking a wider toll on mental health.
There's design decisions like, why should you be able to, kids are using filters that, imagines what they look like with plastic surgery. All these design decisions are having an impact widespread on society, and it's pretty profound.
Impacts Laidlaw says could ultimately add up to hefty lawsuits against companies.
If kids are suffering from suicidal ideations, if they've, suffering from eating disorders, the healthcare costs can be enormous.
The province says it will also seek costs to educate on the dangers of these products to prevent more harm in the future. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Homicide investigators are on scene near UBC after a woman died inside a home within the university endowment lands.
A university campus, you never really expect something like this to happen, and it just doesn't feel like safe anymore. Like we were just talking about not taking the trash out alone anymore. Like we're all gonna be together when we go out to take out the trash. But it's just really tragic that something like this happened.
Mounties say they responded to a call of a woman in medical distress just before midnight Wednesday. She later died. Police say they arrested a man and another woman at the scene. Investigators are trying to identify the victim. She's believed to be an adult associated with the home on Shortcut Road. 2 men have pleaded guilty to a dramatic car dealership robbery in Port Coquitlam in November 2 years ago. They pleaded guilty to several counts of robbery and possessing a gun. RCMP said the 2 men were arrested after taking off in a stolen vehicle. It crashed on Highway 1 after a police chase during rush hour. At the time, in 2022, RCMP said 4 armed suspects were being sought. They still haven't found 2 of them. The men that did plead guilty are in jail, awaiting their next court appearance. Patients and doctors in BC are raising the alarm about growing wait times for diagnostic breast cancer screening. It was a critical test for people who have already identified a potential issue. As Michelle Gassoub explains, radiologists say it's a long-standing problem that's just getting worse.
Imagine being told by your doctor you have a lump in your breast or you're at a high risk for breast cancer, but then being told you'll have to wait weeks or months for your next test to find out more. That's the situation facing many people across BC. One patient we spoke to has 5 family members who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, so she gets screened every 6 months. She's now facing a year-long wait between appointments.
I'd obviously like to keep on my schedule because the doctor has given, the radiologist has recommended this schedule as the best way to keep me safe, and I'm not able to do that. So I'm not super anxious. I'm upset that the system is like this because it's not just for me, it's for everybody.
It's important to understand which exams are being impacted. Starting around the age of around 40, many women go in for a screening mammogram. Now, if a lump or other concern is found, they'd be sent for a diagnostic mammogram. Those are the tests where doctors say they're seeing the delays.
I've had patients where I've done an exam, found a lump, looking for a diagnostic mammogram, and having to phone or get my staff to phone 3 or 4 different locations to get a reasonable time, because the first appointment that we're given is 6 months later, and this is with a palpable lump.
So what's behind this? The BC Radiological Society says it's a number of different things. A shortage of radiologists and breast imaging technologists, not enough new med students going into radiology, and financial challenges for clinics, which do most of the imaging in this province.
We're not producing enough radiologists or radiology residents to deal with our increasing medical imaging demands due to aging population, increasing population, and then just changes in practices where imaging is being ordered more.
The wait times aren't uniform across the province. Some patients say they've been able to access a diagnostic mammogram within weeks. Others say they're stuck waiting for months, but the calls from patients, family doctors, and radiologists is for BC to urgently increase capacity within the system. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Too many students, too little space. It's a growing problem plaguing schools across BC. Now, New Westminster school officials say they're at a crisis point. As Janella Hamilton reports, the district says it's already over capacity by hundreds of students.
Alexis Carr's daughter goes to École Coquette Elementary School in New Westminster, a school the district says is strained past capacity.
My husband and I have talked about whether we would look at private school options, or we've been hearing stories about parents, kids who haven't been able to get into the classes they're looking to get into, just really extreme overcrowding.
Almost all schools in New Westminster are bursting at the seams. The district says it's already over capacity by nearly 600 students this year. And without more space, projections show the district will be more than 2,200 students over capacity by 2037.
So we have the population growth that districts around us are seeing, in fact, a little bit more. What's different here is that it's one of the most densely populated cities in Canada. It's one of the oldest cities in the province. So our school sites historically have been very, very small.
For now, the district has come up with short-term ways to help alleviate overcrowding, including the possibility of having some students travel outside their neighborhood to go to school and adding more portables.
They're not able to use the field anymore. She was a little bit upset about that because I know normally they'll play soccer there at lunchtime, so they're using up a lot of that space for additional portables.
Laura Kwong with the District Parent Advisory Council says a recent report shows there is not enough district-owned land to build new schools to meet growing enrollment needs. She says portables are not the solution and will cost the district hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Portables come out of operating funds, and those funds are barely enough to cover the costs of delivering public education. It's salaries, insurance, programming, maintenance, IT. That's what operating funds should be spent on.
The district plans to have a new 600-student elementary school open by 2027. It will be built on the same land as the Fraser River Middle School. But that project has yet to be approved by the province.
It's going to be a tough few years and things are going to get a little bit more crowded.
Janella Hamilton, CBC News, New Westminster.
A motion from Victoria's mayor to ask the province to delay its crackdown on short-term rentals has been defeated. The mayor wanted the rules set to go into effect in May to be halted until the fall so operators can have one last summer to recoup some of their investments. Councillors who voted against the motion say they were elected to solve the city's housing crisis and argue any delays on tools meant to help with that were not appropriate. Still with housing, officials in one part of the Okanagan are threatening fines and legal action against a couple living in a tiny home they built on their rural property near Peachland. It's one of at least 2 cases where people living in non-traditional homes are being pushed to leave. As Brady Strachan explains, the couple says they have nowhere else to go.
Got a couple of apple, a couple pear.
At first glance, Ryan King and his wife Lisa appear to be living the tiny home dream. They designed this tiny home themselves, nestled in their forested property near Peachland.
Kitchen, fridge, nice live edge tables that I milled up myself.
For 5 years, the couple and their dogs lived a peaceful and sustainable life here until the day they found a stop work order posted on their front door.
So I called up the regional district and said, hey, what's this all about? I'm not building, I've been living here for years. And the bylaw officer informed me that that's not allowed. And yeah, I have to comply immediately.
The issue, the district says the home doesn't meet building code, safety standards, or land use designations. And health officials classify their gray water discharge as domestic sewage. Now, the district has ordered King to remove the tiny home by the end of next month or face a $1,000 fine and legal action.
I definitely don't agree with it. It's like I've said before, I'm doing no harm to anyone around me. I don't think this is an environmental hazard. I think this is a very sustainable and reasonable way to live.
Not according to the district, however, which has issue with the way the tiny home was built.
They certainly need permits, they need to follow the BC building code, and they need to be done in a way that's safe for people and also for the environment.
So do you think that this home isn't safe for him and his wife?
Brady, I think that that's something that our staff have been working with for a couple of years now to try and ensure that whatever's built on that property is built with permits to ensure that they meet the BC building code.
The couple say they have nowhere to take their home and feel they're being forced off their land unnecessarily.
And the thought of it, given the deadline, you know, to be 8 weeks to be out of a place and you don't know where you're supposed to go, is mentally draining. I don't think they know what this does to people.
The homeowners feel the district's bylaws are outdated considering the current housing crisis and only serve to make more people homeless. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
Multi-generational households are really a way of living in the city.
Under 1 or 2 roofs, why more BC families are choosing to live with other loved ones. It's not a new idea. That's next. And thank you for tuning in to our commercial-free live stream tonight. There's growing concern over the future of the Journal, Pioneer, and The Guardian. They're PEI newspapers owned by Saltwire. That company announced yesterday it has filed for creditor protection amid major financial challenges. The CBC's Steve Bruce now with local reaction.
Yeah, stepping up. Just a few years ago, people here in Summerside saw their local newspaper, the Journal Pioneer, go from a daily to a weekly paper. Now, the JP and the island's only remaining daily paper, The Guardian, are facing an uncertain future.
Yeah, it'll be a big loss if we happen to lose any of those papers.
Everybody's on their phone now, right? And but you read the newspaper and you want to sit and have your cup of coffee and share that story with a friend. We need that.
The newspaper's parent company, Saltwire, owns nearly 24 publications in Atlantic Canada. Court documents say the company's nearly $100 million in debt. Saltwire says it's closer to $60 million. Now the company is filing for creditor protection. That would give Saltwire time to restructure, pay down debts, or make arrangements with creditors to avoid bankruptcy. In a statement, the company said filing will help ensure its long-term sustainability. Though these Holland College journalism students say it's it's hard not to worry. This is just the latest example in Canada of local news outlets struggling to stay afloat.
It's already a delicate career field to get into, and it makes me wonder how many more journalism jobs will be available for graduates like myself who will be coming out with our diplomas next year.
Held or holds?
Their instructor is more optimistic. Brad Works used to be managing editor at Saltwire's 2 Island papers.
People will always need information. The reality is it's an evolving industry. I know people like to say it's dying, but as long as people need information that's reliable, there will always be a need for journalism. It'll just take on a different form.
Back in Summerside, city councillors said today Saltwire's future is on their minds.
The value of a local newspaper is, it's astronomical in a small town like this, and we need our newspapers to be healthy.
No one from Saltwire has agreed to media interviews. At this point, it's not clear what, if any, impact the company's financial troubles will have on its 2 PEI newspapers or their staff. For now, the company says it is business as usual. Steve Bruce, CBC News, Charlottetown.
For some people, a sign of success is moving out of your family home. But now some in BC are choosing to move back in. As the CBC's Benit Breit shows us, with BC's housing costs skyrocketing, many families are choosing to live with several generations to try to save some money.
Beautiful BC, where homes can easily cost over $1 million, even $2 million, and rent is typically the highest in Canada.
But here's one way some people are making housing more affordable.
Multi-generational homes. It's basically where grandparents, adult children, and grandkids live together. They might split mortgages, even groceries, and generally help each other out. So how does this help different families? And what can it look like?
When we talk about multi-generational households, it really isn't a failure to launch. It can and is a foundation to succeed for many.
For one family in Vancouver, it's meant building a second home in their Kitsilano backyard.
We're able to move into having a mortgage and be owners and not have to do rent anymore.
Mary Hine and her husband moved in 2 years ago and since had a daughter. Their mortgage is slightly higher than what they paid to rent a one-bedroom apartment in 2020, and they get almost twice the space.
We're adding a tremendous amount of value back into our own land, being able to stay in our neighborhood, being able to stay relatively close to our work. This just seemed like a great option in terms of affordability.
So how did this happen? Well, Mary's parents live in a historic character home that they bought 25 years ago. And if homeowners in Vancouver retain these unique homes, the city has an incentive that allows them to add a smaller home known as an infill on the same property. So Mary and her husband got a loan to build their own 1,400 square foot home in her parents' backyard.
It was well worth the effort. You know, we're here to support, but we're not. We want to stay out of their lives when that makes sense.
What's that? Now, across Canada, homes shared by multiple generations, 2 or more families, or one family living with unrelated people grew by 45% in the last 20 years. That's about 1 million homes in 2021, when the most recent data is available. And there could be many reasons why.
Housing unaffordability, I think that an aging society comes into play. Immigrant culture, that we are a nation of immigrants, and as part of being that nation of immigrants, multi-generational households are really a way of living in the city.
Hi. Hello. Welcome
The Singhs immigrated from Italy to Abbotsford in 2018. Now they own a home, enjoyed by 10 family members, and this is Cookie.
We are lucky we are living together. It's our culture also. Living together, you can share everything.
And that includes the adults splitting a hefty mortgage, bills, and groceries, while Grandma helps care for the kids.
She's another mother for us, and she helped us when our mom was doing work.
Singh says his brother and uncle helped buy the home in 2021. Without family, owning a home in today's market as new immigrants would have felt
impossible, I think. It's a dream to own a home in BC.
And for others, multi-gen living has meant tearing down one home and building 2 units or more on the same lot.
Okay, bud, we're going inside. This is going to be your home one day. It's hard in the city to, for a single family to, to have a single detached home. It really is. So the pool of resources it made this achievable.
Chris's family built a duplex. He will live on one side, his wife's mother and brother in the other.
That's about getting everyone close together and having some square footage to raise this little guy.
He says he's looking forward to moving his family out of their 1-bedroom apartment.
It's going to be our room.
Now, multi-generational living isn't a new concept, but experts say current government initiatives mean we could see more of it.
For example, there's a federal tax credit. It provides a one-time 15% tax refund for renovation costs up to $50,000 for a secondary unit for a senior or someone living with a disability. In 2023, BC also introduced significant new legislation. Part of it is for small-scale housing, and it allows secondary units and laneway homes to be added on single-family lots across BC. And this builder says he's seeing a lot more interest in laneway homes.
So this is 400 square feet. This is the trend. This is how people are going to live in the future. And finances is the #1 driver people are doing this. For laneway houses, we have 11 on our books right now, and 9 of those 11 are for multi-generational.
So yes, there's lots of ways to live together and still have personal space, but multi-generational living may not be for everyone.
It can still be hard to find the right space or enough space that's affordable. There can be questions around privacy and how to share parking. But beyond the challenges, these families say it's one way to cut costs and build a foundation together. Benit Brach, CBC News, Vancouver.
There is a live shot of the Canby Street Bridge, closed until 6 a.m. tomorrow for a movie shoot. They're shooting Tron Aries. That explains the motorcycle and the stopped cars in each lane. Darius will have your BC-wide forecast right after this. And it's a...
Maybe you can't get that annoying pothole down the street fixed. Or your broken green bin lid needs to be repaired. You might need help dealing with one of the city's unofficial mascots. In all of those instances, Toronto wants to change the way you complain about city services, and a new pilot program aims to simplify the process.
One of the challenges, where do they go? Which division do they go to? Do they go to a division head?
Last year, 311 Toronto received 1.3 million contacts. Just under 500,000 of those were requests for service. So that puts this call center here at Metro Hall on the front line of responding to complaints from Toronto residents. Right now, if you call 311 with a complaint, the city's 44 divisions have their own way of handling it. Some divisions have multiple complaint systems.
It's not built with the residents in mind. So instead of 49 different unique nuances and ways of interacting with each division, there'll be one way, one City of Toronto.
Councillor Brad Bradford says the current system is in desperate need of change. It's frustrating for residents who often turn to their local councillor for help.
For most folks, it's as simple as when they pick up the phone to 311 and they place that complaint, they just want to see it resolved. That's all they're looking for. They shouldn't have to come to my office or another councillor's office to get that taken care of.
And he's no fan of the duplication of complaint systems.
Divisional silos are a very real thing. It often feels like an intractable problem. And, frankly, we need to do a better job of having people work across divisions, recognizing that there is only one taxpayer, that Torontonians are just looking for service and they don't really care where it's coming from.
A new committee at City Hall will dig into the pilot next week. Councillor Stephen Holliday leads that group.
The organization itself can learn right from the types of issues that people are complaining about. They expose areas for improvement or where there's gaps in the process, or maybe even gaps in the resources that people are asking for.
The pilot program started last month with 6 city divisions. It will expand to include more throughout the year. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver Inbox.
Join CBC Vancouver's Benit Braich at the Alumni UBC webinar, Build the Future with Gen Z, April 3rd. A panel of Gen Z UBC students and alumni will share their views and experiences about their cohort's values and aspirations, approaches to work, and more. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Our BC-wide weather forecast now with science and climate specialist Darius Madavi. Before we get to that, we've got the solar eclipse coming up. What's going to happen? Do we get to see it?
We've been hearing a lot about it. It's in less than a month. It's very exciting. Unless you live in BC, where it's going to be almost nothing. The path of totality, which is where you'd see the moon fully cover the sun, runs right through parts of Ontario, the Maritimes, Newfoundland, but almost nothing here in BC. The southeastern parts of the province will see a partial eclipse, 20% of the sun covered, but for us here in Vancouver and for most people in BC, almost nothing. So you might see a little sliver of the sun get taken out by the moon, but it's not going to be quite the event we're hearing about elsewhere, which is a little bit disappointing. But what's not disappointing is the weather that we're having this week, segue, because we're going to see a beautiful weekend across pretty much all of BC in the next 24 hours. A little bit more snow coming to the northwest, a little bit of rain for the north coast, but pretty light stuff, and we're not going to see too much of it. And then we dry out into the weekend where the entire province becomes sunny and warm, quite a bit warmer than usual for some, here on the south coast, around 5 degrees, 7 degrees warmer than usual. Other parts of the province, 10 to 15 degrees warmer. So quite a bit of a change from what we've been experiencing lately, and quite a nice one. Temperatures coming up throughout the southern parts of BC. Also, the freezing levels going to shoot up. So you're going to see, even if you're in the skiing in the Alpine this weekend, temperatures 6 to 8 degrees. So you can enjoy those highs if you're going to be skiing. Could be a good chance to get in your t-shirt ski for the year. If we take a look at the conditions across the province, like we said, lots of sunshine, a little bit of precipitation still coming in northwestern parts of the province, but really we're just looking at that sun in terms of a 5-day forecast in Vancouver. Don't have to talk too much because it's just sun, 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 sun. We have temperatures a little bit higher inland as you'd expect, so I get to bring these numbers back again. So be ready for it to be a little bit warmer inland, but overall, no matter where you are in Metro Vancouver, it's going to be a beautiful weekend.
I'm going to try that or attempt that t-shirt ski this weekend. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
That is your late news for Thursday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Janella Hamilton will be your host here tomorrow night at 6 and at 11. Good night.